One of my favorite episodes of Star Trek The Next Generation was an episode called Family. After the Borg, with the aid of an enslaved Picard, destroys most of the Federation fleet in a bombastic two-parter, unusually for a show from the episodic era, the series slows way down for a thoughtful study of our beloved characters grappling with consequences, while the Enterprise receives a symbolic repair and refit.
You don't know, Robert. You don't know.
Family is the one that came after the best of both worlds. I've talked in previous videos how, with pretty much one exception, Buffy struggles a little with the one that came after, as in the one that came after Innocence or the one that came after Hush, episodes with the unenviable job of following up pinnacle beats from the entire series. And there is no more unenviable job than having to be the one that came after The Body, both for The Body's subject matter and it being one of the greatest episodes of, well, television. Modern rewatches lose a lot of the original context and experience that the show was designed for. Contrary to the experience I had watching Buffy, binging one episode after another all day until I couldn't keep my eyes open. A 7-week break originally separated Forever from The Body, and I think that probably worked in Forever's favor. Though I have some problems with the episode, I think it's solid enough. There's a lot here to love, but by the end, the episode feels less than the sum of its parts, more like a series of loosely related vignettes around a plot that ultimately lets the focus character of the episode down. Still, at this point in the gang's life, and given what they're going through, maybe there is a perspective where that feels thematically appropriate. Forever opens with Buffy seemingly finding herself in familiar territory. The music teases for a moment that this might be a return to normality for her, stalking among the coffins for a vampire about to rise. But we're not there yet. It is the day or two after the events of The Body, and Buffy is now dealing with the business of death. She picks a casket, but Dawn wants to stop and have a discussion about what Joyce might have wanted, and I can tell from the evil eye she gives Buffy for her dismissing the conversation that I'm going to struggle with Dawn a bit in this one. Later that evening, the gang is trying to steadily work their way through the details of death. Dawn asks to stay at Willow and Tara's after tomorrow's funeral, and Buffy is clearly hurt. On the porch, Xander berates Spike for showing up with flowers, despite the fact that he says he wasn't going in. Xander doesn't believe him, but after Spike storms off, Willow points out that there was no card. The long shot on Buffy after the funeral has always stuck with me. In a single shot, day behind her fades to night, and she receives a visit from Angel. After everything they've been through, a Riley and a Faith and a giant snake monster, the love is still there. And this is definitely a wonderful Buffy and Angel moment. 11.5 minutes into the episode, Dawn makes the mistake of jump-starting the plot.
I want to do a spell. I want to bring Mom back.
Tara rejects the idea, but Willow, with her magic cures all things problem, sets Dawn down the path of actual success. Ben meets out a little fuel for the arc, revealing to a minion that the key is in the form of an innocent.
An innocent? The key? That's an interesting choice of words.
Giles makes the classic Giles mistake of telling a scheming teenager where the most powerful books in the magic box are, and Dawn steals one of them. And at the gravesite, where Dawn is gathering supplies, the episode picks up a little steam via some Spikenessness.
I'm not going to tell, little bit. I'm going to help.
Spike takes Dawn to meet one of my favorite one-off-ish characters, an old wizard-ish named Doc, played by Joel Grey. There are several interesting bits of foreshadowing here, as Doc hums Peter's theme from Prokofiev's Peter and the Wolf. And of course there's the tail, though I could just be being specious. I can be such a Xander that way. Doc also mentions that Joyce might not come back exactly as she was.
Sometimes these things get a little off.
Dawn and Spike swipe the egg from a very Season 1-y demon. She casts the spell, Buffy finds out. We see Joyce's footsies during a pretty big sibling fight, and right when there is a knock at the door and Buffy is emotionally reduced to being on the same page as her, Dawn finishes the bargaining phase of grief and rips Joyce's picture in half, ending the spell. Marti Noxon's first time both writing and directing was Into the Woods. forever is her second, and honestly, I'm not sure which task feels like the shorter straw, being the first episode to follow the body or having to give Riley a proper dramatic send-off. But I think the direction is a standout here, with some nice visual flourishes. In addition to the graveyard shot of Buffy, I really love this hallway truck shot of Buffy and Dawn. The hallway of family photos between them speaks volumes about their isolation. I also love the way the episode invests time in quiet moments with almost all of the characters, dealing with their inner lives and the profound impact Joyce's loss has had on them. It's an episode that feels well lived in. Spike and Joyce were one of my favorite side relationships in the series, and Spike's scenes in this one, along with celebrating those moments, continues to challenge assumptions about vampires and the soul canon.
And if you don't want credit, why are you helping me?
I just don't like to see Summers women take it so hard on the chin is all.
Spike's chippy leash may be turning him to choices he might otherwise not have made without it, but is that actual change? Or, if he had the ability to harm people again, or even just one individual person, would the monster reemerge? Buffy and Angel's scene is perhaps my favorite between them ever. I love it. Before Tara spent time with Buffy last episode, I had complained in Into the Woods that no one has been asking Buffy how she feels. It's part of the theme of this season, but as a deeply cherished character of mine, Buffy's steady isolation from everyone that began somewhere back in season 4 has been painful to watch, with moments where she's allowed to be vulnerable and intimate becoming fewer and farther between, which is why this feels so cathartic. With Angel, she allows herself to say the things she no longer lets herself say to the others.
You said they told you it wouldn't have made a difference.
They said probably wouldn't have made a difference.
It's the first time in the series for me that their relationship feels like it has moved beyond the hormonal, passionate, teenage, die-in-your-arms-and-nothing-else-matters variety of love that was part of its original theme. Moved beyond it to just love. But I like that their original passion is acknowledged, and even Angel gets a nice beat of humanity in this one.
I told you. You better go.
I'm sorry.
God, I love that. Angel apologizing because he feels like he can't show up for her the way he wants to is so human and painful. And I love Buffy telling him that even what he's capable of giving her is vital and necessary.
No. I'm so grateful that you came, Angel. I didn't think I was going to be able to make it through the night.
Giles' scene of grief feels incredibly appropriate to his character, restrained and private, with a wonderful callback via Cream's Tales of Brave Ulysses. Willow and Tara and Xander and Anya all have scenes expressing their increased awareness of the value of their time together. It's all very satisfying. The thing is, this really isn't a Buffy episode, or a Xander, Willow, Tara, or Anya episode. This is a Dawn episode, and Dawn doesn't really have a vulnerable, intimate scene like the rest of them, which is a huge problem. I'm ordinarily a staunch Dawn defender, but the way this episode is written does her no favors. She is incredibly frustrating in this one, snapping and attacking everyone else who the episode actually bothers to spend time showing in a state of mourning and grief, making her look even more the tedious child. This is a discussion that will be very relevant to the way a particular character is written almost all the time in Angel Season 4, and the common defense I hear in discussion with other fans is, Dawn is a child. She's a kid. Her behavior is very believable given what she's been through. And yes, that is true. It's not that her actions feel out of character for a young teenager dealing with the death of her mother. This is a world of magic and monsters and superheroes, including Buffy, who did already return from the dead. Of course, someone young and suffering would want to try this. It's completely understandable. The problem is that the story in which she is the central figure does nothing to reflect her personal experience. We can have a lot of compassion for Dawn, but the distinction I would make is between what I would call circumstantial compassion versus relational empathy. While I have compassion for Dawn and her circumstances, the episode doesn't bother trying to have us relate to her perspective. Instead, Dawn tells us her perspective, but almost without fail, everything Dawn says is demonstrated false by the episode itself.
You won't even look at me. It's so obvious you don't want me around.
Nope. Dawn wanted to stay with the Wiccans after the funeral, and the episode showed Buffy obviously hurt by it. Buffy was also concerned for Dawn's welfare in the hospital last episode. We also see Buffy looking at Dawn in most of their scenes together.
I don't have anybody.
We only ever see Dawn surrounded by other people. Scoobies, her friends. Here, she has Spike, so nope.
Mom died, and it's like you don't even care.
Yeah, no, the episode spends a lot of time showing us that Buffy cares.
You've been avoiding me. I'm not.
Again, Dawn is the one who stayed at the Wiccans. There is no other evidence in the episode of Buffy avoiding Dawn, so no. The episode is constantly undermining our access to Dawn's experience, telling us her perspective, but not bothering to show it to us. And this could have been remedied without changing a line of her dialogue or altering the trajectory of the plot by framing scenes differently. Show the Scoobies leaving a room and abandoning her in it. Show Buffy trying to put a happy face on rather than a numb one, and what that does to Dawn. Adapt the visual storytelling of the episode to Dawn's experience rather than the experiences of everyone else in the episode except her. Episodes are regularly edited around a single character's perspective. Think Willow in Doppelgangland, or Xander in The Zeppo and The Replacement, or Giles in A New Man. Alternatively, give her some dialogue where she isn't in snappy teenage attack mode. Allow her a moment or two of vulnerability before she tries the big evil, maybe in conversation with Spike or her crush Xander. Just a moment for us to connect. There are plenty of examples of villains doing this in the series. Think the Mayor and Faith. It feels like a crime that I felt a lot more emotionally connected to Ford in Lie to Me than I do to Dawn in her own episode about her grief.
You know what, Summers? I really did miss you.
Of course, there's another way that the audience can emotionally connect to a story that has less to do with the writing itself, shared experience. I came down pretty hard on Listening to Fear and its ceiling turd for being a dreary and tedious slog. When I did, there was an outpouring in that video's comment section from people telling me how precious that episode was to them, having lived with and taken care of a family member with dementia. I love that. I'm glad that Listening to Fear is that for some people. But for me, lacking that personal experience, Listening to Fear did nothing to pull me in or connect me to what was going on. Likewise, never having been a glowy ball of green energy made into frustrated young teenage girl with a super older sister who just lost their mom, that I know of, I could have used a little more here. I've also never been a redheaded witch lesbian who lost her first love. That I know of, I guess, but I absolutely adore Something Blue. Looking closely, the plots of Something Blue and Forever have a lot in common. In the wake of an emotional loss, one of the Scoobies is deep in grief. They are angry and combative when other people try to help. They address the problem with magic, and when that goes awry, are forced to make amends. It's just that Something Blue is both framed from Willow's perspective and allows us a handful of vulnerable moments to connect with her.
I just can't stand feeling this way. I feel like I've been split down the center and half of me is lost.
Dawn is acting selfish, and that's what the episode is about. It's a part of her journey. She's a kid, and losing a parent is tough, and we can have compassion for that. I just wish that the episode was constructed in a way where we could see things from Dawn's perspective. As it is, the episode just makes her look consistently petty and even cruel. I don't think the episode intended for us to find Dawn constantly frustrating and rude, but if it did, that just isn't a very compelling character to build the plot of the episode around. And none of this even really takes the ending into account, which I am pained to say I dislike for several reasons. Most of the emotional notes in the final scene feel confused to me. These are terrific actresses with potent material, but I think this is a case of a Dawn episode getting a little sabotaged by the fact that structurally every episode is in one way or another supposed to be about Buffy. Buffy already has a nice vulnerable and intimate moment with Angel in this one, and Dawn has been the one cold and withdrawn and due for an emotional catharsis. Because of that, the placement of Buffy's goated breakdown feels baffling, and Dawn soberingly tearing the photo while completing the theme of her intended arc leaves us without any emotional shift or breakthrough for her. It just all feels off and is significantly worsened by some of my own admittedly biased personal attachments to the body, which I described in that video as feeling sacred and private for me.
Mom? Mommy?
Mommy. Buffy.
I hate the mommy callback to it here, having Buffy say the mommy words in reverse because Joyce is coming back. I hate the feet. After the reverent and church-like framing of Joyce in the previous, there's something that just feels weirdly tasteless about seeing resurrected Joyce's feet here. I really hate seeing her silhouette in the window. It all feels so unnecessarily icky. The editing could have just removed the silhouette and the cutaways to Joyce's feet and left the knock. That would have been haunting enough. enough. I'm not sure why the scene needed to gesture to its ticking clock in such a heavy-handed fashion. But whatever, the episode was an incredibly tall order, and there is a lot to it that I really enjoy. On this examination, I also realized what a weirdly pivotal dry run this one is for a lot of Season 6. And the more I thought about it, the more I think there are some really interesting unanswered questions to the spell. Did Joyce just materialize in the graveyard, or did she have to dig herself out of her own grave? The focus of the episode is more on the moral implications of the spell, and so avoids muddying the waters by showing Joyce too closely when she's on screen. But because of that, we don't even see for certain that she returned as zombie Joyce. Maybe the spell went right. Maybe she was just herself.